now I'm very excited about introducing our last two keynotes. I have to admit, I'm feeling a little sad that this event is over. It has been like a really remarkable couple of days, not only because of the amazing work our curators have done in bringing voices to the stage, but the energy that I've seen from all of our participants. So thank you all for joining. But we've got some really exciting sessions right now. The first is a conversation about turning purpose-driven play from idea to impact, from in-game to real life. With over 3 billion gamers worldwide and nearly 70% of them likely to engage with games that incorporate social good, we have a unique chance to drive change at a global scale. Our two speakers that are going to talk about this, Mathias Nørvig, CEO of SYBO, the studio behind the global mega hit Subway Surfers, joins Deborah Mensah-Bonsu, social impact partner at Supercell. And they're going to share practical insights on how studios can create social good, activations, these activations that can truly resonate with players and translate into real-world actions. So please join me in welcoming Deborah and Mathias to the stage. Do you need this? Do you have slides?
All right.
Hello, everybody.
We have to start.
We do.
1, 2, 3, go.
Okay.
We wanted to challenge each other to make it a different set. So I get to ask the hard question first. Yes. Why should these people listen to you?
Yeah. You understand now we had to play for it? I was like, oh, we gotta. Okay, so why should you all listen to me? Well, I do believe maybe it's not so much about me, but I think the things that myself and, of course, Mathias will talk about, we think these are important things, so regardless of who's saying them, it's probably a good idea to listen. I think for me personally, what I think I bring to the table is that I am an optimist, or maybe a bit of a closeted idealist, if you will, but also like a realist, which means that for me, it's actually enough to say, I just kind of want to do the good thing, or I want to do the right thing. Like for me, that gets me out of bed in the morning. I want to leave the world a better place, and that's great. But I also understand that for most people, that's not enough. So I think for all of us in this room, we understand that we want to make some kind of impact. But for a lot of people outside of this room, that's not enough. So I think it's being able to straddle that and have that balance and understand that the things that matter to me may not matter to someone else, and then being able to communicate why I think they should matter to those other people. And I would say the last thing is, you said, why should they listen to me when I talk? But I actually think talk is cheap. So I think I'm also someone who has ideas. I think I'm pretty creative. But I also just do the stuff. And I think that's really important in our field, that we're not just talking about the things, but that we're actually doing them. Hey, Mathias, why should people listen to you?
I think that was a good answer. I think because in a setting like this where everyone comes to talk about impact and do impact, it's meaningful for me to keep talking about it also as we leave this conference. The sincerity or the sort of perseverance of also bringing it up in forums where the audience is not buying into this agenda. Bringing it into meetings where you're not having it is what I can't stop doing. So I don't think that necessarily I have all the answers, but I believe that it's super important that we keep having this conversation. The window for change comes at a relatively late stage of success in any company. And then it's also the first thing that gets turned off as soon as anything is challenging. So how do we keep that window an opportunity to keep driving change? I think that's super important.
Agreed. Well, Mathias and I, we go a little ways back, and we thought we would also share how we know each other. Mathias, do you want to go? Tell the people.
Yes. We've been having quite a lot of fun preparing for this talk. I think it all started with Jude's Play Nice dinners. Sam Barrett, Trista Patterson, John Erner, a lot of others, Kieran, showed up for the Play Nice dinner at GDC. We decided to start playing for the planet. And then Deb and I were introduced basically because we thought there would be a nice idea. I forget if it was yours or one of the others, but having Green Game Jams as an annual recurring event, both as a way of reminding the studios that wanted to do stuff like we did, but also invite more studios in to keep doing green initiatives in their games.
I can't say it was my idea. It was John Erner's idea back at Space Ape. And I still remember this little WhatsApp group that you and me and John and Sam had when we were trying to get the first Green Game Jam off the ground back in 2020 during the pandemic, which, now has grown into a thing. But that's how we first got to meet, and it's super cool that we still get to work together. So.
As we were planning for this, we realized that between us, we reach 400 million people every month. So Subway Surfers up to 150 million, and Supercell's games combined 250 million. And that means that when we put things in the game, it also has a lot of impact. And I think part of this was also, how do you operate? What is your MO in Supercell to get these messages across?
Yeah, so I think my MO, in general, I guess I try to think about how I can help empower others to reach the players that we have, the many, many players that we have. And so I work with all of our different game teams to try to figure out what kind of messaging might make sense in our different titles, but not just within the titles, also I think at a company level, trying to get people to think about the stuff more and more so it becomes part of our DNA rather than something that is happening in a corner somewhere. I think, like I said, because not everyone is naturally on board immediately, I do think we have to give kind of reasons for why we think this stuff matters. So things that, I'm just going off here. I'm a little tired, can I just say? Before we came on here as well, I was like, I don't know exactly what's going to come out of my mouth, but regardless. But no, really trying to understand what matters to our players is important. So not just trying to push things onto them that we think are important, but trying to meet them where they are. So that also means understanding that each of our different games will have different ways of reaching our players or a different subject matter that makes sense for our players. So I think that's kind of where everything starts always, is with how do we engage them? What would they like to see in our games? What's a seamless integration? What will kind of enhance their experience as opposed to compete with the things they already love in the games? So that's kind of how I think about things when it comes to doing the work. But how about you, Mathias? What's your MO?
I think I appreciate that we are a lot smaller than Supercell. We're the biggest of the small companies or the smallest of the big companies. We're 200 people, but we also reach 150 million people. So we have a nice reach, but we don't have the highest in our purchase games. We don't have the same EBITDA as some of the major sort of multi-billion companies. We don't want to choose the winners in each of this. We want to support all the initiatives. So we keep, whenever someone calls us and say, can you fund this or can you do this? We say we are already stretched, but we would like to try more. So we support things 2 or 3 years at a time, and then we move on to something else. We do Pride every year with new organizations. We do Green Game Jams with new organizations. And then we try to support as wide as possible to see what works. Also to inspire others, because people then say, well, have you done this campaign 10 years in a row? And we haven't. We've tried different things to sort of see what sticks. And I think that's the way I operate in general, that I feel that it's not our choice what should work, but how do we inspire people to take action based on what we do.
I guess I disagree a little bit, just in the fact that I think at Supercell we have done lots of things over many years, and a lot of the things we actually have never talked about publicly. but we've donated more than $50 million to different causes globally over the many years that we've done social impact work. I actually think one of the things we need to do more is talk about the work that we do, because it can inspire others. But I think one of my main focuses is to try to bring more focus to the things that we do, because I was having a conversation earlier with someone as well that the stronger your yes is, it makes it easier to say no. And I think there are so many amazing causes, right? We see something every day that we think we could actually get engaged in. But I actually think it's important that we find a focus where we think, this is our strength, here's where we can have the greatest impact. And that might mean saying no to a lot of other things so that we can have more impact in this space. So yeah, I understand trying lots of different things, but I also like to be strategic in where we put our efforts and our focus. That makes sense.
Makes sense.
We also wanted to talk about our biggest failures. Do you want to? Do you want to talk about your biggest failure? What do you think it is?
In the impact space, or in my personal life?
As a human.
Yes.
Just in general as a human.
Yeah. Do you have? I think we need more than 9 minutes for that. We all do our best. I think with regards to SYBO in the impact space, I think I'm an eternal sort of. I have a very pragmatic approach, and I want to do more. So I think my feeling of inadequacy, of I would like to do even more, follows with the idealist that I also possess. So I know we are commercial first and foremost. I'm an idealistic person by nature, and that means that talking about failure, it feels like we should do even more. And that's the conversation I bring to my fellow CEOs. I try to make this a CEO topic. How can I make Ilka, how can I make Phil, how can I make all the CEOs of all the other companies want to do even more, while acknowledging that some of these people I mentioned are actually some of the people who are doing the most. So there are also the names that I wouldn't mention because they're not doing anything at all. And how do you keep being that annoying voice without alienating yourself from the table? So I want to stay at the table and bring up that topic. At the same time, I feel inadequate in not having convinced more people to step up and do more. Yeah. What about you? What's your biggest failure?
My biggest failure, I think there have been probably many. One of my previous answers, big fail, so constantly failing, fail fast. But no, I think probably self-doubt, to be honest, because a lot of the time, I think I'm quite lucky that I see things maybe a bit sooner than some other people see them. And I think when you see things earlier, it also means you're often alone in trying to make that thing happen, because maybe other people aren't on board with it yet. And then when you are alone in trying to make that thing happen, you start to doubt yourself a little bit, because you're like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe that thing that I really believed in or really thought would make a difference, maybe I was just wrong about that. And then I kind of maybe take a step back. And then time passes, and then I see oh, no, I was actually right, because it's happening here or it's happening here. So I think, yeah, that self-doubt can be the biggest failure, just because it means then that I don't do the thing.
What are you proudest of?
Proudest of when I actually follow through. So when I do listen to, it sounds a bit cheesy, right? But when you do listen to your heart and actually do follow through, and you think, okay, maybe no one's on board yet, but I really believe they're going to be on board and follow through. I think those have been some of my best decisions, best work. I think I'm very proud of course, the Green Game Jam, to see it now, 5, 6 years on, having dozens and dozens of studios, and seeing what Lisa and the team have done with it, I think is incredible. So super proud of that. What are you most proud of?
I think the Green Game Jam is one, both from seeing that more studios are joining. In this space, it's for me a lot about each studio sharing what have they learned and how can they inspire others to do the same. So I think so the Green Game Jam is one. I think in general, whenever we put purpose into the game, the reactions we get from the players, whether it's more engagement on the social media post, or whether it's the feedback, sometimes personal letters to our customer support of saying, we really like that you put a focus on a plant-based diet. We tried to see what was the favorite veggie sandwich of each country as part of one of the Green Game Jams. We've tried to save species. We've tried to put focus on renewable energy. And whenever we do those things, it feels more meaningful to also make entertainment. I think fun has to come first. There's a reason why Amnesty International doesn't have a top 10 downloaded. And that's not to say that their cause is not important, but it has to come from fun. And then you can add purpose. I don't believe in having a purpose-driven evergreen. But the way we can put things on top while staying fun, I think is what I'm proudest of at SYBO, that we've maintained that. We're a 13-year-old game. We still have 1 million daily new installs. And the fact that we can sprinkle some of these purposes in without losing the fun is, I think, our greatest achievement.
I think sometimes maybe we also underestimate the little things. We were chatting before, and I was mentioning, like, for a few of our titles, we did this mental health campaign around Superfest. So Superfest is our esports finals that we held late last year, and we partnered with Movember. And it was all around trying to get boys and young men to talk about mental health, because often there's this isolation and this loneliness, which can lead to some really dire outcomes. And we had our community managers actually make a video where they were talking about it. And it was not necessarily a lot of work on our end, but being able to share that video with millions of players, and then seeing some of the feedback, like even in the YouTube comments, from some younger players as well, just really feeling seen, or maybe they've contemplated some really dark things, and then feeling like, oh, a company like yours is actually paying attention, or I love to be in your games and playing, but you see this side of me too. I think when we understand that the people who are playing our games are human, right? And they're not just, they are there to have fun, but if we can acknowledge that they might be carrying some really heavy things, I think that's just so powerful. And sometimes we focus a lot on the outside, so also with the environment, right? It's like the outside world, but I actually believe one of the most powerful things within games is if we reach the inside of people, and the inside of our players, and we can let them know that they're seen, and that that they're loved, and that people care about them, because I think everything that we're seeing on the outside is a reflection of what's going on the inside anyway. So the more that we can bring even a little bit of healing to those inside places for our players, I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what we can do with that.
We're also seeing on TikTok that people use Subway Surfers as a backdrop to telling quite personal stories, sludge content. And somehow the Zen moment, I know for older players, they don't feel it's a Zen game, but the flow of flicking left and right means that it's a nice backdrop to a story that might be tough to tell about people's personal development or experiences they've had. And if we can be an outlet for that, I'm actually also quite happy with that. We had 1.6 billion views last year on all types of content, but the fact that we're also being used for storytelling of others is super meaningful. Mm-hmm. We have, I think, only time for the last question. So,
the last question.
What is one thing you know to be true?
One thing I know to be true. Maybe it touches a little bit on what I was just talking about, the inside versus the outside. I think one thing I know to be true is that we all have this desperate need to be loved, and we're always trying to fill it with lots of different things, and the things that actually fill it are the things that are free. So things like community, having a really good conversation with someone, giving someone a hug, making someone feel seen. And I think we don't spend enough time on those things. We're always looking for, I don't know, success or the titles or the material things. Or so yeah, I think that's one thing I know to be true. If we focused more on like nourishing those parts of each other, we would all be better off. What's one thing you know to be true?
So Pippi Longstocking has a saying, I don't think it's actually her quote, but the author of it, that says if you're incredibly strong, you have to be incredibly kind. And I love the platform that I represent, the millions of people we reach. And I think that one thing I know to be true is that you have the responsibility. I think Spider-Man rewrote it to something with great power, great responsibilities. But the fact that everyone in this room and everyone listening in has the power to do something. So if you're not doing anything, do something, quoting Leo from his opening remarks. If you're doing something, do something more. We need more action, and we need this conversation to continue also after we leave this room.
Well, 0, right on the nose.
0, 0, 0.
Amazing.
Thank you so much,
everyone.
guys.